Welcome to Pulse of the Planet. Please subscribe and hit the bell icon for more breaking updates. Tonight, we're tracking a story with global implications, one that's sending ripples through the very foundations of international trade and American politics. In a stunning move, the Supreme Court has struck down President Trump's controversial reciprocal tariffs, a decision that's already being called historic by legal scholars and economists alike. This landmark ruling dismantles a key pillar of the administration's trade policy, sending shockwaves through Washington, rattling investors on Wall Street, and prompting urgent meetings in world capitals from Beijing to Brussels. At the heart of the case was a fundamental question. Can a president unilaterally wield such sweeping economic power, bypassing Congress and reshaping global commerce with the stroke of a pen? Trump's tariffs, justified under the banners of national security and the fight against fentanyl, targeted over 60 nations and affected hundreds of billions of dollars in goods, from steel and aluminum to electronics and everyday household items. Supporters hailed the tariffs as a bold defense of American industry and jobs, arguing they were necessary to protect national interests. Critics, however, called it a dangerous overreach, one that hurt American consumers, squeezed small businesses, and risked sparking trade wars. Now, with the Supreme Court's decisive ruling, the debate that has divided the nation for months is officially over. But while the legal battle has ended, the real-world consequences are just beginning to unfold. This isn't just about legal arguments or political maneuvering, it's about the price of groceries at your local store, the stability of jobs in factories and farms, and the future of America's relationships with its allies and rivals. The tariffs, in effect since August, had already fueled inflation, driven up costs for families, and created economic anxiety for millions. Many are now wondering how quickly relief will come, or if new challenges will take their place. With the decision, a new chapter begins, one filled with political battles in Congress, economic adjustments for businesses large and small, and a period of uncertainty as the nation recalibrates its approach to global trade. Tonight we break down what this means for you, your wallet, and the world, exploring the far-reaching impact of a verdict that's sure to shape the future for years to come. To grasp the Supreme Court's ruling, we need to revisit how this trade storm began. In April, President Trump announced reciprocal tariffs. If another country taxed American goods, the U.S. would match it. The tariffs, ranging from 10% to 50%, hit allies and rivals alike, justified under emergency powers to combat fentanyl trafficking. Supporters saw it as economic liberation. Critics warned it would raise prices and hurt American competitiveness. Allies retaliated, escalating a global trade war. Customs revenue soared, but so did costs for businesses and consumers. Mounting economic pressure and legal questions set the stage for the court battle we're dissecting tonight. The legal fight over Trump's tariffs erupted almost immediately, setting off a high-stakes battle that would ripple through the nation's legal and economic systems. What began as a presidential decree quickly escalated into a constitutional showdown, with both sides preparing for a lengthy and consequential struggle. Business groups, alarmed by the sweeping nature of the tariffs, wasted no time in filing lawsuits. They argued that the president had overstepped his authority by invoking emergency powers to reshape trade policy on such a broad scale, something Congress, they insisted, had never intended when it passed the International Emergency Economic Powers Act, or IEPA. The legal filings painted a picture of executive overreach, warning of dangerous precedents if left unchecked. The case quickly made its way to a federal appeals court, where a panel of judges weighed the arguments. In a landmark decision, the court sided with the challengers, declaring that the president's authority under IEPA was not a blank check to rewrite the nation's trade laws at will. The ruling emphasized the importance of checks and balances and the need for clear limits on executive power. However, recognizing the potential for economic turmoil, the court stayed its decision. This pause was meant to prevent immediate chaos in the markets and give the administration a chance to appeal, highlighting just how high the stakes had become for businesses, workers, and the broader economy. The Supreme Court, acknowledging the national significance of the dispute, agreed to hear the case on an expedited basis. The justices understood that their ruling would not only resolve the immediate controversy, but also set a precedent for the limits of presidential power in times of crisis. Today, the court delivered its verdict. In a decision that will echo through the halls of government for years, the justices affirmed that the administration's use of IEPA to impose sweeping tariffs amounted to executive overreach. The ruling drew a clear line, stating that even in the name of national security, the president could not bypass Congress to fundamentally alter trade policy. The justices found the administration's justification, linking the tariffs to the fentanyl crisis, too tenuous to support such sweeping action. They noted that while the opioid epidemic is a grave concern, it could not be used as a catch-all rationale for broad economic measures unrelated to the core issue. The verdict immediately invalidates the entire tariff structure, halting collections at the border and sending shockwaves through industries that had adapted to the new trade landscape. The decision opens the door to massive financial consequences, including potential refunds and a scramble to adjust to the sudden change. Legal scholars predict this ruling will be studied for generations as a defining moment in the ongoing debate over the limits of presidential power. It stands as a powerful reminder that even the highest office in the land is bound by the Constitution and the rule of law. As markets react and policymakers scramble to respond, one thing is clear. The fallout from this decision is just beginning, and its impact will be felt across the nation for years to come. The financial stakes are staggering. With the tariffs struck down, the U.S. Treasury must address what happens to the $72 billion already collected. July and August alone brought in nearly $60 billion, money now at the center of a logistical nightmare. Treasury Secretary Scott Bessent warned refunds could reach up to $1 trillion if the tariffs had lasted longer. Customs and Border Protection faces the daunting task of processing millions of refund claims. Some companies are already selling their rights to these refunds, creating a new financial market. The government now faces a massive budget hole, as this revenue was already factored into spending plans. The administration must manage both the political fallout and the practical crisis of returning billions. This is a fiscal earthquake that will test the Treasury and Congress in the months ahead. The Supreme Court's decision has immediate consequences for American families. The tariffs had already pushed inflation higher, raising prices on essentials like food, clothing, and cars. With the tariffs gone, economists expect inflation to cool, though it won't happen overnight. Companies may lower prices, but some might keep savings to recover lost profits. The Yale Budget Lab warned the tariffs could have pushed nearly 1 million Americans into poverty by next year. Striking them down averts this crisis, offering relief to low-income families. Businesses now face choices about supply chains and how to use their refunds. The economy is in transition, and all eyes are on how quickly relief reaches consumers. This decision reverberates far beyond U.S. borders, sending shockwaves through the intricate web of global commerce and diplomacy. The Supreme Court's ruling is not just a domestic legal event, it's a turning point that will reshape how nations interact, negotiate, and compete on the world stage. The reciprocal tariffs had triggered global retaliation and strained alliances, leading to tit-for-tat measures that disrupted supply chains and raised costs for businesses and consumers worldwide. Countries scrambled to protect their own industries, and uncertainty became the new normal in international markets. Now, countries like China and the EU see relief and a chance to de-escalate trade conflicts. For them, the ruling offers an opportunity to reset relations with the US and pursue more stable, predictable trade arrangements. It's a moment to rebuild trust and cooperation after years of tension. The US loses leverage. Mexico may rethink its own tariffs on Chinese goods, and ongoing negotiations with allies are upended. The balance of power in trade talks is shifting, and countries are reassessing their strategies in light of the new legal landscape. The Trump administration must find new tools to pursue its goals, as the primary stick is gone. Without the threat of sweeping tariffs, policymakers are forced to consider alternative approaches, diplomacy, targeted sanctions, or new legislative efforts, to achieve their objectives. Allies now have more bargaining power, and the basis for many talks has shifted. Negotiations that once revolved around U.S. demands now require more give and take, and smaller nations may find new opportunities to assert their interests. President Trump has threatened to unwind trade deals if his authority is curbed. Whether he follows through remains to be seen. The uncertainty adds another layer of complexity, as businesses and governments brace for possible policy reversals or new confrontations. The administration's push for allies to join in high tariffs on China and India has lost its justification. With the legal foundation for such actions weakened, coalition building becomes more difficult, and the U.S. may find itself more isolated in future trade disputes. The global trade system will begin to reset, but the old equilibrium may never return. Markets, companies, and governments must adapt to a new reality, where rules are being rewritten and the future of international commerce is uncertain. The world enters a new era of trade diplomacy shaped by this landmark ruling. As nations navigate this uncharted territory, the decisions made now will echo for years to come, influencing the prosperity and stability of the global economy. Experts are weighing in on the ruling's impact. Economists say it may ease inflation and avert a deeper trade war, but it creates long-term policy uncertainty. Legal scholars call it a landmark for separation of powers, reasserting Congress's role in trade policy. The ruling limits the president's ability to use economic pressure as foreign policy, forcing future administrations to be more precise with emergency powers. Treasury officials warn of the disruption massive refunds will cause. Former trade representatives say the administration's unilateral approach backfired, isolating the U.S. and uniting opposition. Business leaders are cautiously optimistic, calling it a victory for consumers, but warning the damage will take time to undo. Companies must now navigate refunds and rebuild stable supply chains. The focus is on ensuring a smooth transition and a predictable trade environment. The Supreme Court's ruling opens a turbulent political chapter. For President Trump, it's a major defeat, his signature trade policy dismantled by the courts. Congress is now energized to reform emergency powers and reclaim its authority over trade. The administration must devise new strategies to address China and the fentanyl crisis without tariffs. Will Trump retaliate by unwinding trade deals or seek new legislative tools? The threat of greater economic instability looms if rhetoric turns into action. Allies and adversaries are watching closely, uncertain of America's next move. The road ahead is fraught with political and economic uncertainty. This Supreme Court decision isn't just a headline, it affects your daily life. It could lower prices, avert rising poverty, and reshape America's role in global trade. The ruling is a reminder of checks and balances and the real-world impact of government decisions. The coming months will bring challenges, massive refunds, shifting policies, and new debates over presidential power. Staying informed is crucial, as these decisions shape our economy and future. We'll continue to track every development and bring you the facts. Now more than ever, it's important to stay engaged.